Hi, this is Liz Nedden. Let's have a look at research and referencing. So we need to do research when we're looking into some specific standards. And what this means is we need to be trying to explain why we expect a particular pattern. Whether it's a relationship, a comparison, or a time series, we need to try to find out why and give a good reason. So one of the things that we can often do to start with is a bit of a brainstorm, and so explore what information might be useful to collect and what we know about the topic to start digging into the why. So when we do writing this up as a hypothesis and in our investigations, we want to make sure that we use appropriate language. So that means we always want to talk about suggestive language or inferential language. So I notice that my data says this. I'm not going to make an inference about the population until the very end. But I don't like using those words like prove and definite, because as soon as you collect data and it isn't a population, we do not know for certain. It's very likely through all sorts of things, but we've got to use that suggestive language. So let's have a look at referencing. So the first thing we want to think about is, why do we do it? And we always want to make sure that we credit whoever the author is of the idea, of the piece of work. We want to credit them. We want to avoid plagiarism. Okay? So it allows readers to assess the validity and the reliability of the evidence. So by saying whose this has come from and where it's come from, you can say, oh, that's somebody that's quite well known and has published a lot, so I trust their work more than somebody else who I don't know. Okay, so it allows us to assess that validity. It also allows us to the readers to find the source. So if they want to go back and find out more about it, they've got a way to do that. And it also shows that your argument, your reasoning is supported with evidence. So it's not just you saying this, but you have others that support your view. So a note about plagiarism, and that's the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as your own. So copying is another name for it, but it's when you do it a direct copy and you don't tell us where it actually came from, who the original author was. So to avoid plagiarism, things like paraphrasing or rewording. So this is when you rewrite it in your own words, but you also at the same time acknowledge where those ideas came from. If I want a specific quote, then I put some quotation marks around it. I want to record and reference all of my sources, and I often want to summarise, so rewrite all those ideas in my own words. So to cite a source, if they're general knowledge, the sky is blue, that's a general knowledge thing. We don't need to reference that. Or if it's an idea that we came up ourselves, I created a new machine that does XYZ. If it's something that I've created or it's general knowledge, we don't need to cite it. But everything else we do need to cite. So as I said with quotes, if you want to copy exactly what somebody's written, sometimes there'll be a key phrase that you want to include, then just put some quotation marks around it and the author's name alongside it. If we want to summarise, use the main ideas, so focus on what the main idea is and rephrase it, rewrite it in a much shorter sentence or paragraph than the original work. Paraphrasing, that's when you rewrite it a bit more but still use the general gist. So we can see there's the example where what they've done to paraphrase, they've kept the main ideas and they're not changing the meaning, but they've just reworded it. But you would still want to cite where the ideas came from. So when we're doing this, we also want to think about the source. What are credible sources? So think about your purpose. What is the purpose of the person writing the article or that news clipping or the video or whatever the document is that you're looking at? Are they just trying to inform people? Are they trying to sell you something? Are they trying to persuade you? So look at what their purpose is, whether they're factual, unbiased, or whether it's somebody's opinion. Think about accuracy. Is that evidence trustworthy, reliable, and verified? So are there multiple sources is one way we can go about that. Think about the author. Are they qualified to write on this topic? If it's, for example, an article about cancer treatment and it's from somebody who does not have a medical background, I might not trust them as much as somebody that does have that medical training. Timeliness. Is it recent information or is it something that's 20 years out of date? And is that relevant information? Is that information relevant to explaining your why? We're always focused on why we think something would happen. So list of sources, you could do that as a reference list at the end of your document, or you could do footnotes. So let's have a look at an example and let's go through the process. So I've got my Wilson investigation, and the question was, I wonder if stretching muscles beforehand is going to affect how long they can do a wool sit for. And so I know it's a comparison investigation, and we want to compare the students who stretch and those that don't, and we want to measure the time that they hold the wool sit for. So if I think about my graph, I've got my length of time along the x-axis, and I've got my two groups, stretching group and non-stretching group. And I need to hypothesize which one I think might be able to do it for longer. And my first thought is, if you stretch beforehand, the muscles will get a bit warmed up, so maybe that's going to help us hold a longer wool sit. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what my suggestion, my hypothesis will be. So I'm hypothesizing that my stretching group will have a longer wool sit time. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is I want to find some research to support this idea. So I want to do a mind map, for example. So what I've done there is I said, okay, well, here's my wool sit. I'm going to think about the muscles. What are the different muscles involved in this? And I went and found a bit of a info diagram here, and I decided mainly quads, abs, and hamstrings. Those are the core muscles that are used probably. But I don't know for certain. I should actually do some research on that. But I can also look at the blood flow to the muscle, how big your muscles are, and does that stretching get more blood flow, and so on. So I'm just doing a bit of a brainstorm of ideas to get me started. So then what I've gone and done is I went to Google and I went to do some research to explain why, using some of those ideas I just came up with. So I found 3 different websites and articles that I thought were more trustworthy that had some useful information. So I've kept a note of the website itself, and I've kept a note of some particular pieces of information that it might be useful for me to write up about. So that's what I've got there. So our last step is now to summarize that into one paragraph and making sure I explain the why, and using quotes and references and stuff as appropriate. So I've started by pulling it all together and saying, okay, well, my reasoning is stretching will lead to more blood flow into the muscles, and that will lead to more oxygen, nutrients, and energy, and that, I think, will lead to a longer wool sit time. So this is the information I'm trying to summarize the information that I got on those websites. And so that's what I'm just doing, is putting together a chain of reasoning. And now I can write that up. So this is what I've come up with. That my hypothesis is that people who stretch before could hold it for a longer time, because, that's what I'm looking for, as the muscles are stretched, the more blood flow goes to the muscle, which leads to more oxygens, nutrients, and energy going to those muscles. And this then leads to being able to hold a wool sit for longer. So that's what my reasoning is, and now I need to provide evidence. And so that's when I want to reference those sources that I found. So I've said these ideas are supported by, for example, Dr. Timothy Miller on one of the websites, and I've got a little footnote there. And he stated, notice I've got in quotes, stretching increases blood flow, boosts oxygen levels, and helps deliver nutrients to your muscles. Then I refer to the Healthline website, and I'm now paraphrasing what they said. And they said that stretching makes the blood vessels widen, which leads to an increased blood flow. And then my third piece of evidence is when Celebrity Fitness Coach talks about that increasing the blood flow leads to more nutrition circulating around the body. So I haven't completely finished this quite as fully as I might like, because I do need to then link up how doing a wall sit needs energy, and so therefore the more energy you've got, the more oxygen to the muscles, the longer you hold it for. So I haven't quite finished it, but this gives you a general idea of what it is that we're looking for. Thanks very much for watching.